The cyclist was riding down a quiet trail in Waukesha, Wisconsin, when he spotted something horrifying. The 12-year-old girl crawling out of the woods, covered in blood. She had been stabbed 19 times and was barely clinging to life. Gasping for breath, she just said these words, "Help me, I've been stabbed." What no one could have imagined was who did this. Two 12-year-old girls, her best friends. And the reason? To prove themselves to Slender Man. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of A Brush with Death. I am your host, Miss Casey Hunalay, and in this series I sit down, I tell you a true crime story, and I paint you or draw you a pretty picture at the same time. So if you love true crime and you love art, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and like and comment this video. That way you will never miss one of my terrible, yet hopefully inspirational stories at the end. So, what are we talking about today? We are talking about the Slender Man stabbing case. And this is a crazy one. And thankfully, nobody dies in this one. So maybe it's a little bit more... I hesitate to say lighthearted because it's not. It's pretty gruesome, but the victim in this case does live, so there is a happy ending to this case. But again, it is pretty twisted and disturbing, so just be warned, and let's get into this case, guys. So I realize that maybe some of you watching this don't actually know who Slender Man is. I was fully immersed in Slender Man when he first came out, so I know all about it, right? But some of you may not know who Slender Man is, so let me give you a little synopsis here. So he is a fictional character. He was created around 2009 on the Something Awful forums by Eric Knudsen. He is described as a very tall, like as tall as a tree, basically, very, very unrealistically tall, faceless, and dressed in black, usually like a black suit. And he became this like viral myth through Creepypasta and other online forums. This is like the early years of Facebook and MySpace and all that stuff too, right? So that's where it became really popular, and on YouTube as well. He was said to have stalked and abducted or traumatized children, and some stories claim that he lived in a mansion in the forest or would take his victims to the Slender Man mansion. Now, 2009, this is when I was in college. Again, it's aging me. And I remember me and my friend Brooke, hi Brooke, if you're watching, we went down a rabbit hole with the whole Slender Man thing, and there was a whole YouTube series on Slender Man, and basically made it seem like it was real. Like, it was a dramatic adaptation of this guy basically being stalked by Slender Man, and we were so into it. And I was really into horror back then too, horror movies and that type of stuff as well, and it was just right up my alley. I loved it. So that's all I remember about Slender Man. But anyways, this case takes place in 2014, so about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. So the first person that we will talk about in this case is Anissa Weier, and she was 12 years old at the time and was described as very quiet, intelligent, but socially isolated. She was obsessed with the paranormal and creepypasta content online, and especially Mr. Slender Man. The second player in this is Morgan Geyser. She was also 12 at the time, and she was Anissa's best friend. She had a history of mental illness and was later diagnosed with early onset schizophrenia, and which is a condition that ran in her family. And then the last player in this is Payton Leutner. She is also 12 and was Morgan's longtime friend since 4th grade. She was known as being very kind, trusting, and loyal, and she did not share the same fascination with Slender Man than the other two did. So kind of sets us off on kind of an awkward threesome here. If you've ever been a part of like a friend group that's only 3 people, it is kind of lopsided. I remember being a part of a girl friend group that was 3 people, and I don't know, I just kind of like accepted that they were kind of like best friends, and then once in a while I would hang out with them, and like, oh, it's Casey, like she's the crazy one, that's fine, like she'll just hang out with her for a little bit, and then we're gonna have a sleepover, and then she'll go home. Makes me sound like such a loser. I wasn't a loser, I was very popular, guys, very popular back then. Anybody can tell you. Okay, so this story happens in 2014, May 31st, 2014 actually. So the night before, May 30th, Morgan Geyser celebrated her 12th birthday with a sleepover. She invited Anissa and Payton over, which were her 2 very closest friends. The girls stayed up late, ate donuts, played dress up, and roller skated at Skateland, which all seemed very, very normal, especially to Payton. And knowing what we know now, and we'll get to it, but like pretty innocent feeling and pretty crazy what happens next, guys. So anyway, so Morgan and Anissa, however, were secretly plotting against Payton the entire time. And they'd been doing this for months. The next morning, so the 31st, the girls had breakfast with Morgan's parents. Then they asked if they could go to David's Park, which was a wooded public area in Waukesha. Did I say that right the first time? Waukesha? Waukesha, Wisconsin. Morgan's mother later said she was surprised that Morgan didn't ask to open her presents right away, which she said was a red flag in hindsight, right? Something that she usually would have insisted upon, but for some reason, she wasn't thinking about presents this particular birthday. Once at the park, the girls first went to a public restroom at a nearby skate park. Once in the bathroom, Morgan tried to knock Payton unconscious by pushing her into a wall, basically trying to push her head into a wall. She later said that she had hoped to kill her there so it'd be less messy, but Morgan hesitated, and Anissa admitted that she didn't feel ready to kill Payton just yet. So their plan, whatever that was temporarily abandoned. The girls suggested then to play hide and seek in a nearby wooded area, and Payton agreed. And it makes me feel like, again, there's lots of like documentaries about this case, lots of podcasts cover this case, and it still makes me wonder, like, after trying to like knock her unconscious in the bathroom, why did Payton go along with this? And I'm trying to like put myself in her place, and maybe she was just trying to, even if she did feel threatened, maybe she was just trying to get out somehow, I don't know, by agreeing to play this game. Anyways, so she supposedly did not suspect anything sinister, and she trusted her friends. So once they were deep into the woods, the plan was for Anissa to tackle Payton and restrain her so that Morgan could stab her. 12-year-olds. Wow. But again, they struggled to go through with this plan. Approximately 10:45 a.m., so this was all in the morning as well, just a reminder. Eventually, Morgan handed the knife, a 5-inch kitchen blade taken from her home, to Anissa. But Anissa told Morgan that she had to do it. Morgan said to Payton, "I am so sorry." And then she stabbed Payton 19 times in a frenzy attack, while Anissa stood nearby, just kind of egging her on. The knife pierced Payton's arms, legs, stomach, liver, diaphragm, and narrowly missed her heart by less than a millimeter. One stab wound hit a major artery near her heart. Payton was screaming and cried out, "I trusted you." And Morgan and Anissa told her to lie still, saying that they would go get help for her, but instead they fled on foot. Great friends. And they headed toward the woods and eventually Interstate 94, believing that they would now be accepted by Slender Man and taken into his mansion now that they had killed one of their best friends. So around 11 a.m., this brings us back to the beginning of our video, severely wounded and bleeding, Payton crawled out of the woods. She dragged herself through leaves and brush and eventually reached a nearby bike path. A cyclist named Greg Steinberg found her and immediately called 911. She told him, "Please help me, I've been stabbed." Oh. 12-year-old, guys. God. I usually don't cover children's cases, but since she lived in this case, I feel like I should cover it. Right. Emergency services rushed to the scene, and paramedics were astonished that Payton was still alive. Me too. She was quickly taken into surgery at the Memorial Hospital nearby, where doctors discovered the extent of her injuries, many of which were life-threatening in the stomach, the diaphragm, near the heart. It was a miracle that she was still alive and that she would live. Early afternoon, the same day, they didn't get very far, police began searching for the two suspects based on Payton's statements, and she was able to still talk and tell them what happened. Morgan and Anissa were found later that day walking on the side of Interstate 94, about 5 miles from the park. They were calm and compliant. They had a backpack with granola bars, water bottles, clothes, and the bloody knife wrapped in a plastic bag. During police interviews, which were later released to the public, both girls confessed very quickly, and Morgan appeared very detached, sometimes giggling. She said, "It felt weird. I felt no remorse." Anissa showed more emotion, but maintained that they believed that Slender Man was real and that they had to kill Payton to prevent him from hurting their families. Both girls confessed in chilling interviews, and they said that stabbing was necessary to appease Slender Man and become his proxies so he wouldn't harm their families. They were charged as adults, which mental illness does come into play later on, so I'm not sure if I exactly agree with that, but again, this is a very adult crime, so maybe I'm not too upset over it, which is mandatory. So charging them as adults is mandatory under Wisconsin law for certain serious crimes involving 10 to 17-year-olds. So both of the girls did, actually all three of the girls went under mental health evaluations. Morgan Geyser was diagnosed with early onset schizophrenia, which is hereditary. And she had reported having hallucinations, including talking to characters like Voldemort from Harry Potter and seeing Slender Man. Yeah, it makes me, I feel bad, like, and I saw other reports that her father also had schizophrenia, so I'm wondering if they had gotten her help sooner, if this would have been prevented. I mean, probably, right? But again, like, hindsight is 2020. It didn't seem like she had reports of anything like this previously, so how could they know? I don't know. Anissa was diagnosed with shared delusional disorder, Folie à Deux, which is the name of the latest Joker movie. Did anyone see it? Our Lady Gaga is in it, and I didn't actually see it. I heard her performance was great, and I heard his performance was great. It was just not a great movie. Anyways, at a later, she also was diagnosed with a later oppositional defiant disorder. She claimed to genuinely believe that Slender Man was real, and it seemed like both girls were both terrified of him, which, I can empathize with. These are two 12-year-old girls who seem like they are not in the right mental health state and are terrified. So, of course, something bad is going to happen. So, 2014 to 2017, this is when pretrial proceedings happened for 3 years, but sometimes it takes a long time. Multiple hearings determined whether the girls were fit to stand trials, and the attorneys pushed to move them to juvenile court. However, the judges denied these motions, citing that the seriousness of the crime called for adult big girl court. Right? So Anissa actually had a plea deal in August of 2017. She pleaded guilty to attempted second-degree intentional homicide, but claimed she was mentally ill at the time. In September 2017, a jury found her not criminally responsible due to mental illness, and she was sentenced to 25 years in a mental institution with eligibility for conditional release, which I think is the best case scenario here. She is at least getting the help that she needs, even though it's under, very, very strict, confinements, right? But I think it's definitely necessary in her case. Morgan also pled guilty. She had a plea deal in October of 2017. She pleaded guilty to attempted first-degree intentional homicide. She was found not criminally responsible and sentenced to 40 years in a mental institution as well. That's the maximum that's allowed. So again, both received, I think, what they should have, especially for juveniles committing such an atrocious crime on their friend, no less. Mental health is such a hot button issue right now, and I'm glad that this went, not the attempted murder, but like the trial and all this went down the way that it did, because I think that ultimately this is what's best for the girls and best for the victim as well. Anissa was actually released in 2021 after serving 7 years. A judge ordered her conditional release to live with her father under GPS monitoring and mental health supervision. She was granted full release from state supervision in 2024 after court hearings confirmed she met the requirements. So it seems like they are doing their due diligence and they're keeping an eye on them like they should, and making sure that they get the help that they need to, hopefully be redistributed back into society. As of 2025, Morgan remains institutionalized at Winnebago Winnebago Mental Health Institute. In 2022, her petition for conditional release was denied, partly due to safety concerns and expert assessments of her continued hallucinations and delusions. So, thank goodness that they're taking it seriously and they're not just letting her loose, right? So her conditional release on July 17th, 2025, so just a few weeks ago, the County Circuit Judge Scott Wagner approved a modified conditional release plan for Morgan, now 22, from the Winnebago Mental Health Institute, where she has been committed for nearly 7 to 8 years following the 2018 sentence of 40 years in psychiatric care. Early in 2025, Judge Michael Boren had granted her release after 3 mental health experts testified she had made considerable progress and posed no significant risk to public safety. But however, in March 2025, state health officials raised concerns over her mental behavior and citing that she had failed to proactively inform her treatment team about reading a graphic novel about murder and the black market sale of human organs, and correspondence with a man who collects murder memorabilia, which included disturbing drawings she sent. There's a lot to unpack there. So prosecutors and the victim's mother also objected because the original group home proposed for her release was located only 8 miles away from Payton's home, raising safety and privacy concerns. So a revised settlement plan required to meet court approval was drafted by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, including placement in a group home, not in Milwaukee or Waukesha counties, and 24-hour supervision, including GPS monitoring and medicated treatment and medication management. Any future changes related to placement or tracking would require explicit court approval, providing no objections are filed within 3 days of receipt. The release is expected to be formally ordered with her expected placement around August 4th, 2025, which is today. So I don't know if they're going to come out with a placement for her today or maybe tomorrow, but hopefully I will have some updates for you guys soon. I thought that was really interesting. And one of the reasons why I wanted to cover this case was I knew that she could potentially get out soon and be placed under supervision, outside of this mental institute. So we will see. We'll see what happens. But I hope that, they continue with monitoring her treatment, continue with monitoring her, and just making sure that she's on the up and up, right? Because that's what this is all about, is making sure that people are rehabilitated and right for society, right? So what is Payton up to? Well, Payton survived all of that physical trauma and mental trauma, emotional trauma, all of the trauma, right? And she actually returned to school in the fall of 2014, which, wow. And she graduated high school in 2020. She gave a very emotional interview to ABC's 2020 in 2019, describing her trauma and her recovery. She said she has forgiven Morgan, but wants nothing to do with either girl, which I do not blame her. I'm glad that she was able to forgive them. I think that forgiveness isn't for the other person, forgiveness is for you. So if you are able to forgive, I think that's a huge step in the right direction. And it seems like she's trying to, move on and live her best life and do what she wants to do. So I'm so happy for Payton, happy that she's moving on. So like always, I like to end on a quote, and this one is anonymous but is often attributed to Dr. Joyce Brothers. She says, "Children are great imitators, so give them something great to imitate." Very powerful. This quote resonates because Morgan and Anissa weren't born monsters. They were deeply influenced by what they consumed, unchecked online. Their entire sense of right and wrong was warped by fiction. They couldn't emotionally or mentally separate from reality. The Slender Man case teaches us that children's minds are impressionable, and when fantasy, mental illness, and loneliness collide without intervention, the results can be tragic and sometimes fatal. I try to limit my own time online. I try to limit my TV time and my intake of the world, right? And try to really focus on what's actually real and in my life, right? My family and my friends and, our home and all that stuff, right? And our family life together is something that we can really lean into and demonstrate to our children of what's really important, right? Not that like world events and, keeping up on news and stuff isn't important, but it's not the only thing that we should be concentrating on, and it's not, we need to be very steadfast with what we let our children see and take in, right? So that's what I wanted that's what I wanted to say. I hope that you guys found that inspirational. Now to go over the piece that I did for this case, and I really liked this one. Oh my gosh, it is so cute. So Payton loves animals, especially cats. So I thought I would do something for her and do this cute little Bubs. Oh my god, he's so adorable. And he's a little spooky too, so I thought that would be perfect for this case. And, Payton, if you're watching this, I hope that you're doing good and you like this piece. Oh, little cute. Alright, guys. Oh, he's so cute. Alright, so I hope that you enjoyed this case as much as I love putting them together. And I hope that you found it inspirational at the end. And this is the whole point of me doing this, is to hopefully turn these horrible situations around into something positive and something that we can all learn from and hopefully take back out into our culture and society and make it a better place for everyone, right? All right, guys. Well, I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. That way you'll never miss one of my stories. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Be kind to one another. Be kind to yourself. And I will see you in the next video.